right, so if we want to take students from leaning on pi to discern author's purpose to our past strategy using the rhetorical triangle or Aristotle's triangle, I'm going to take you through exactly how the fourth grade team at Vandegrift rolls this out at the beginning of the school year. And that's just to say that um, any student from third grade, really, as long as the student reads well enough that they are reading to learn rather than learning to read at that point, they can use this strategy. And it can be modified to be a little more sophisticated, like I'm going to do for you guys, because you're adults, so we're going to use an adult example. But I want you to know this process works from third grade all the way up until graduates. And so, moving from pi to past, we have a triangle on the board. We have P, purpose, A, audience, S, speaker, and T, text, all already spelled out for the student when we're introducing it. And then we select a text that we're going to analyze with this strategy. And because our focus is really on the strategy here and not on some kind of complex text, we're going to use something super low stakes that everybody has experience with, like a text message exchange. So what you have here is an authentic text exchange between myself and my professional mentor, Dr. Barti. I just want to give you a second of silence to read through this text message exchange before we jump into the strategy. All right, so if we're over here on the right side of the screen, the text that we're going to analyze together is my introductory text message. I just left the office, headed your way. Is there any way we could grab a bite to eat while we chat? All right, we know that the speaker in this situation is me. We know that the audience, just because I told you, is my professional mentor. And so then we have a lot of information in through which to discern author's purpose. And I don't just mean one primary purpose, but there are a lot of choices made here, right? And so I want you to take a second. I want you to think through the sentence structure, the words that I chose, the formality, even though it's in a text messaging format. And as you're thinking through these choices, what do you think might be some of the purposes or an overarching purpose for this initial communication that I sent her? Hopefully, some of the things that might be passing through your mind are, I'm trying to inform her, right? If we're using Aristotle's language, the exigence or the rhetorical situation is that she may be waiting for me. You can tell from context in my texts that she's already at the restaurant, right? If I respect her enough to be my mentor, I'm using familiar language because we have a relationship, right? They're brief sentences. They're not headed your way is a little bit more familiar than a complete form like I am headed your way. And so it's not completely formal, but it is in complete sentences, even though it's in a text message. And I'm apparently really hungry, but I'm asking in a very polite way if it would be possible for us to grab food while we are meeting. So the overall purpose, right? There's information. Me using formal language with someone in a text message format is a little persuasive because I want her to know that I know how to punctuate sentences correctly. I want her to know that I can use standard English, right? This is not completely informal. There is something that I, quote unquote, have to prove to her. And all of this can be derived just through using past. And so, as we talked about before, the triangle was used by Aristotle to communicate that if one of the aspects of this changes, then it changes the choices that we make. And so I want to prove that to you. And this is exactly what you do in the classroom. After you've had some meaty conversation analyzing all of the choices that the author made on the text that's in the center of the triangle, then you can change it out, right? So we have I want you to know that this is a same situation. All right. This was constructed. This is a constructive conversation for the purposes of this session. But this is the same conversation between me and my husband, right? So quickly read through the exchange. Okay. Same situation, different audience, completely different choices on my part, right? And so when you're doing this with learners, you want to make sure that the strategy stays the same and all that changes is one, maybe two components of the strategy itself, right? So instead of on my way home in a complete sentence form, even though that's familiar, I have an acronym. OMWH. That's something that my husband and I use when to communicate quickly. Starving, right? There is no polite there. It's like feed me Seymour, right? And then we know that the speaker, once again, is me. But with a changed audience, the spouse of 30 years, that definitely affected the way that I communicated with him, right? My purpose is altered. I no longer have the purpose of needing to convince my listener of my intellectual status, right? Or my ability to use standardized English. I'm still needing to inform the person that I'm talking to that I'm hungry and that I have just left the office, right? Um, but many of my choices changed in my communication because the audience changed, right? So the purpose is still to inform. If we're thinking, remember for the premise of this session that all messaging, all text is rhetorical or persuasive, what might I be trying to persuade my husband with this text? And you may have come up with a better answer than this, but my overall purpose is I need him to figure out dinner. Right? I'm on my way home. I've passed the point of just being hungry. I am hangry, right? And so I am trying to persuade him to do something about it. And so I just want you to see that this very brief piece of text that we're analyzing gives a lot of information because we've used the past strategy to analyze.